Hello! Today we are going to talk on a very important topic: how to develop your spatial awareness skills. There is nothing difficult about that, but there is one peculiarity. You have to practice. Of course, you can knock down a few poles, trees, fences, scratch and dent your car time and time again. Almost all experienced drivers went through this. But can you minimize those dents and scratches? Of course you can, if you practice. I'll show you a few exercises which I use at my spatial awareness classes. Some of them have long been known, and some of them I invented myself. The spatial awareness cycle is divided into several video tutorials. Here is the first short lesson. I put a pillar next to the car. By the way, I've already shown this in my videos. I tell the student to turn the steering wheel in the opposite direction and ask, if you drive, will you hit the pillar? Everyone says they will. Then I suggest trying. We move and everything's in place. It doesn't even stir. Thus, if you turn away from something, it means you drive away from it and you won't hit it. This is true for modern cars. However, this is not applicable to older cars or trucks. Next, we put two pillars at a distance of about 30–40 meters. The car is between them. Your goal is to drive as close to the front pillar as possible without hitting it. You can leave the car and look at the result. Then do the same with the rear pillar. The video shows the ideal case. This is what we should strive for. Do not be upset if you can't do it at once. This is common. That's what practice is for, to achieve the result. Drive, stop, leave the car, have a look, and again, time after time. Now, let's make the task more complicated. Repeat your actions with the front and rear pillars, but this time slightly hit them, so that you can see that the pillar stirs and tilts. But it should remain standing. The advantage of this exercise is that you see the result without leaving your car. The pillar tilts, that's the result. But if the pillar falls, you need to go out of the car to put it in place. The exercise is pretty interesting, even kind of funny. At least my students are always happy to do this exercise. Now reposition the pillars. Make a kind of a clearance gate. Drive between the pillars. You can't hit the pillars. Reduce the distance between them gradually. At the end of the exercise, the distance between the pillars and the car mirrors should not exceed half a centimeter. Let's continue our spatial awareness tutorial, part 2. Last time I suggested that you drive through a clearance gate forward and in reverse. We did it with our wheels almost straightened, just adjusted the steering wheel a little. Now let's do a new exercise. The same clearance gate, but now there are two of them. And you need to pass through them while turning. If you look at the movement pattern, you'll see it's a circular motion. But every time you enter the gate, you need to aim to adjust your path. By the way, if the car front fits the gate, it doesn't mean that the rear of the car will automatically pass as well. Chances are you hit the inside pillar. At my classes and in my video tutorials, I say again and again that you need to be aware of what's in the direction you are turning to. My advice is to be further away from what you need to be aware of and closer to the opposite side. When turning right, watch the right pillar and get closer to the left one. Then look in the right mirror and watch the interval between the car and the pillar. Slow down, and if the gap is too small, straighten the wheels. The reason for that is that with the wheels straightened, the gap doesn't change. That is, it neither decreases nor increases, and that's what we need. But to learn to get close to the outside pillar while turning, you need to learn to feel where the front corner of the car is. This is a separate matter. We have already practiced with the front and back dimensions of the car, have learned to feel the lateral dimensions. And now we need to learn to understand where the corner of the car is. And what happens with that corner when you turn. You will need the help of your instructor for this exercise. The instructor should put the pillar very close to the front, but he or she also needs to consider the front wheel and the supposed motion path, so that you don't hit the pillar when moving. The instructor can see the situation from the outside, and he or she can put the pillar where it needs to be intuitively. His or her goal is to put the pillar so that the car can really pass without hitting it, but pretty close. And each time the instructor has to move away at different distances, quite far away and not that far. But every time the bumper has to pass close to the pillar. If you put the pillar too close, tilt it and say it was impossible. This exercise should be done in both directions. Make left and right turns. This way, you learn to understand how the left and the right corners pass the obstacles. Why do we do it? To make the students remember with their eyes and develop their visual estimation. Go. Stop. continue our spatial awareness lesson. In the first two lessons, we learned to feel the dimensions of the front and the rear of the car, lateral dimensions. We need to understand how the car's corners behave while turning. If you haven't watched the first two lessons yet, click the mouse and have a look. In this lesson, we need to understand where our wheels go when we maneuver around some hole or just move straight. Part 3. For starters, I'll give you a curious exercise to revise what you've learned. I make a square using 4 pillars. The distance between them is about 4, 5 or 6 meters. I ask the student to drive through the square and then come back to it along the shortest path from any side. I become a traffic controller, and I make the square smaller with each time. The square eventually becomes some random figure, and the motion path that I said becomes more sophisticated and complicated. Every time I make the student slow down and check all the pillars. For these classes, you need a separate ground and complete absence of other cars. The student is so focused on the exercise that an approaching car may remain unnoticed. This is the main exercise in the entire cycle of the spatial awareness lessons. In 20 minutes, the motion pattern becomes so complicated that even professional drivers may feel uneasy. But this is what practice is made for. And now, the next exercise. I explain to my students that we are going to do a new exercise, to pop boxes. Choose cartons with cups suit best for this exercise. It's a good idea to find a lot of such cartons. Scatter them all over the ground. You need to pop them with both left and right wheels. Why do the cartons need to have cups? They are quite airproof. And when you drive over such cotton, it kind of explodes, with a characteristic and pleasant pop. It's pleasant because the student realizes that she hasn't missed, and you can see that she's in a better mood after such a pop. You can use plastic bottles instead of cartons, but in this case you'll need to prevent the bottles from rolling. Otherwise, they fly away at the most inappropriate moment, right from beneath the wheel, and you have an impression that you've missed it, but in fact the bottle is to blame. And you always need to end your lessons in a good mood, on a good note. You need to gain victory every time, even if it's a small one. That's all. See you later. The author of this lesson is Sergei Novakshonov, translated by Ksenia Kogan, Prima Vista Translation Agency.